The Gloriana Set by ThebeMoon. Read by Ella Max Mabella. Chapter 33. Flying High.
I want you to have the right to be angry.
Hermione spent the rest of Wednesday not thinking about that statement. She didn't think about it in arithmancy or during lunch or in herbology. She didn't. Pouring that night was a disaster. Malfoy made proper concentration almost impossible since he insisted on standing against the back wall and, well, looking at her. Hermione could hardly hold her wand properly, what with, I want you to have the right to be angry, not playing in a continuous loop in her head. Why did Malfoy say that? What did he mean? Why wouldn't he explain himself? And what was the expression he was wearing now? It wasn't sneering or haughty or flirty or even amused. He almost looked content, just stood there watching Hermione make paper origami shapes, float or expand or change color, and when she glanced at him, he'd just nod encouragingly. What the hell was that? After porn, she stomped back to the Gryffindor Tower, found Ginny in the common room, and dragged her upstairs. Ginny sat on their small sofa as Hermione stood before her, practically acting out her morning conversation with Lavender. A description of Moaning Myrtle had Ginny laughing so hard that Hermione had to threaten to leave before she would calm down.
"Can you believe that?"
Hermione shrieked when she'd finished describing the scene in the bathroom.
"Can you believe that?" "Which part?" Ginny asked. "It all sounds unbelievable. I think I'll visit Myrtle myself, give her a little thrill. Blaze does this thing where—" "You're disgusting," said Hermione, hands on hips. "I'm talking about where Lavender lied. She lied because I'm mean to Draco Malfoy. Who does that? Who even thinks that?" "Well, you do yell at him and hex him quite often," Ginny said, sitting back so Crookshanks could jump on her lap. "But don't worry, I think he likes it." She winked. "I bet he remembers your punch during third year quite fondly. Talk to Luna. She's into all kinds of kinky things like that. She says "You're mad," Hermione said. "Stark raving mad. But that's not the worst of it. I go back to Patience and—" She described her and Malfoy's conversation. "And then he says, I want you to have the right to be angry." Her roommate's eyes widened. "He said what?" Hermione repeated the statement. "What does that even mean?" Ginny tilted her head slightly, considering. "I don't know," she said finally. "You don't know. Everything else you have 100 opinions, but on this you don't know?" Ginny pushed Crookshanks off her lap and grabbed her robe and toiletries bag. "I wouldn't care to speculate." "What?" Hermione was ready to bust out the windows again. "You love to speculate. You spend hours speculating about the stupidest things. Please, Ginny." Hermione followed her friend through the door. "I need you to speculate. I simply can't extrapolate from that sentence without additional data." Ginny, however, would not be moved. Her attitude, which had only been strengthened by nearly 2 months of dating Blaise Zabini, was that Slytherin simply could not be passed out. Hermione, she stated, would have to Gryffindor up and ask Malfoy directly what he meant. "Just be careful," Ginny said, winding her hair into a clip in preparation for a shower. "Don't ask a question unless you're prepared to hear the answer." Theo was waiting by the portrait when Hermione left the Gryffindor common room Thursday morning, asking if he could join her table for breakfast. Hermione accepted immediately. "It's nice to see a cheerful face in the morning," she said, sitting opposite him in the great hall. There was only a smattering of students at the table this early, either bright-eyed early risers or desperate students working on last-minute assignments. "How early do you wake up?" he asked. "About 6 o'clock, she said. "It gives me a chance to work on my loop." "Loop? Is that your knitting?" "My life optimization organization plan." Hermione poured herself some chocolate. "I list 5 things I look forward to every day, review best practices, and write about my life goals." "What are your life's goals, if you don't mind sharing?" Theo asked with every air of interest. So refreshing. Certainly superior to past loop discussions with Malfoy. Hermione smiled back at him. "At the moment, my goals are to finish my education and determine my career path. I have a rubric." "Oh, Godric, is she talking about lube?" Ginny asked, crashing heavily into a seat beside Hermione. "Quick, Theo, distract her." "Willingly," Theo said,
leaning over the table and giving her a light kiss, much like the one at the Spangled Veil. Hermione couldn't help glancing at Malfoy, who was passing on his way to the Slytherin table. She expected a scowl, but that smug look of his didn't waver. She narrowed her eyes at him, and he winked back. Git? Anyway, Hermione continued briskly, Professor Sinastra is advising me on ministry applications. He looked over at the head table. I don't see her this morning.
I hear she's leaving Hogwarts,
Ginny said. Theo shook his head. No, she didn't get that ministry job after all. He smirked at Hermione. You might need a new advisor.
You're spooky, Theo, Ginny said. I bet you knew that before she did.
Who says she knows yet? Theo asked, raising his goblet of pumpkin juice with a graceful hand. Knowledge is power, little Gryffindor. Pull up a chair and be instructed.
Is he always thus arrogant?
Dean Thomas asked Hermione. He's a Slytherin, Hermione said, shrugging. I agree that knowledge is power, but I don't see the value in knowing who's fighting with his parents or flunking herbology. You'll find that you'll need such knowledge to advance in the adult world, Theo said. Hermione finished her chocolate and poured a cup of tea. I'd rather advance my own merits. I'll leave you to play politics. You bring the cleverness, I'll bring the connections, Theo said, tipping the goblet slightly towards her. Together, we'd make a great team. Ginny dropped her fork, open mouthed. You talk a lot of nonsense, Hermione said, trying to keep her tone light. I have to get to ancient runes. Theo stood as she left the table, giving the still-seated Gryffindor man a slightly contemptuous glance. But he made no move to walk Hermione to class, just resumed his seat and started talking to Ginny. Hermione left the great hall pleased that Theo, anyway, saw the benefits of inter-house unity. She could feel Malfoy's eyes watching her as she entered ancient runes, but he made no effort to approach her. There was no potions class on Thursday, and Hermione spent her morning free period alone in the potions lab. The blood potion was developing well, with an appropriate, if rather disgusting, film spreading on the surface. A week, perhaps, maybe less. She considered adding some dewberries to hasten the congealing action, but deemed it too risky. After lunch, she arrived at Dada to find a note on the door instructing the advanced students to head to the grounds and help prepare for the Halloween festival the following night. Hermione shifted her too heavy bag and stumped back down the stairs, grumbling under her breath. It didn't seem right to forage her educational opportunities just because Ernie couldn't manage his prefects. The skies had cleared again, and a rare October sun had dried out a broad grassy area between the castles and the school's entrance gates. Hermione joined a small clump of Dada students just outside the castle. A harried-looking Ernie was directing prefects on raising a giant tent in the space. Ginny volunteered to take over the task, and the head boy had the rest of the class assemble tables and place them on previously marked locations on the grass. Bluebell took Theo and Luna to pick up pumpkins from Hagrid's garden, and Hermione was assembling a table with her wand when she saw Malfoy approach Lavender, who was staring, baffled, at a pile of table parts. Malfoy was obviously set to apologize, and while Hermione couldn't hear what the two were saying, their expression and body language were eloquent. Malfoy, I'm sorry for going all Death Eater on you, Brown, because you lied to Granger for patently ridiculous reasons.
Lavender, oh, Draco, I accept your apology. You can say anything you like because you're handsome.
Malfoy, I've already adequately apologized, but because I'm Draco Malfoy, I have to overdo everything. So I'm going to continue apologizing in a ridiculous, suave voice. Lavender.
Hey, Draco, you can say whatever you want. Your lips do such cute things when you're threatening to kill me.
Malfoy. All right then. You seem entirely too happy about this, so I'm going to back away slowly. Lavender reaching out to grasp her sleeve.
Oh, it's too late, Draco, darling. I'm completely mesmerized again, and I'll stop at nothing to prove my devotion. Will you go and come back?
At this point, Hermione was overcome with giggles. She did not cackle dementedly, no matter what Ginny had said at the party, to the detriment of her half-assembled table, which now had a leg sticking out at the top. She glanced up to see Malfoy standing before her, looking a little drained. Don't tell me you heard of that, he said, waving a hand back at Lavender, who watched them closely, likely on the lookout for signs of meanness. Like Hermione, He'd shed his robes and jumper and loosened his tie to soak in the rare sunshine. "I didn't need to," Hermione answered, amused. "You're obviously forgiven." Malfoy looked over at Lavender, who beamed and waved at him. "I hope I don't live to regret this day's work," he said. Ernie strode by, still barking orders.
"All right, folks, we're putting all the tables on the east side of the meadow by the entrance gate instead of the west. Oh, Hermione."
Ernie stopped and turned beet red. "Hello, Ernie," Hermione said, resisting the urge to close the 2 top buttons of her shirt.
"I've changed the marks, so you'll know where to place the tables."
Ernie said to his shoes. Malfoy looked from Hermione to Ernie, eyebrows raised. Macmillan, excellent work here," said a condescending voice, and Hermione nearly groaned, for Theo had arrived in all his Slytherin glory. "So glad to see you found everything you needed from the storage room," he rumbled on, ignoring Ernie's flushed face and Malfoy's frown. "Did you form a committee, as Hermione suggested? She can be quite persuasive, can't she?" Hermione glared at Theo, then turned to the head boy. "Ernie, you're doing a wonderful job with the festival," she lied calmly. "I'm going to make sure the headmistress appreciates all your hard work." Ernie preened.
"All it takes is an organized mind."
"Yes, very few people appreciate the value of time management," she said.
"Annie,"
Ginny called.
"Ten's up."
"Is it now?" said Theo.
"Be right there,"
Annie called back and walked away quickly. Hermione crossed her arms. "I would consider it a personal favor, Theo, if you didn't embarrass my friends in front of me," she said in freezing tones. "Now, Hermione," Theo began. He stopped and gave Malfoy an irritated look. "Don't you have somewhere else to be, Draco?" "Not at all," said Draco. He was detaching the leg from the top of Hermione's table and repairing it with his wand. "Carry on. I believe you were explaining to Hermione why you bullied her pet Hufflepuff, who apparently had the misfortune to walk in on the 2 of you. Surely he has suffered enough." "I expect you to apologize, Theo," Hermione said. "I'm still cross." "Fine, Hermione. I'm sorry Not to me," she said through gritted teeth. "To Ernie." Theo cast both Hermione and Malfoy a look of equal dislike, then stalked off towards the large tent, which was already collapsing on one side. "I spend a lot of time making you boys apologize to people," Hermione grumbled. "We find it difficult to live up to your righteous Gryffindor standards," Malfoy said, as he expertly attached the table's remaining legs. Then he righted the table with a wave of his wand. "For someone who's supposed to be so morally upright, you're quite effective at bullying the 2 of us." He leaned closer, hands on the table between them. "Do continue on. Theo might kick, but I rather enjoy it."
"You are mean to him,"
Ginny's voice suddenly echoed, and Hermione said,
"What I think he likes it."
Malfoy's eyes glittered. "You're blushing, Hermione. Interesting." Hermione waved her wand, pulling the assembled table out from under Malfoy's hands, and he staggered slightly to keep his balance. She began levitating it toward an appointed spot. "I was thinking of Theo," she said haughtily. "Yes, quite splendid, isn't he?" Malfoy said as they crossed the meadow with the table floating before them. "Trying so hard to appear fully in command, adopting the superior, indulgent tone with you." His tone was light, but his displeasure was clear. "I'm surprised you can stomach it." "I'm a very tolerant and forgiving person," Hermione said. She gave Malfoy a sideways look. "Obviously." "Ah, and there it is," Malfoy said as they passed Theo and Ernie. "I'm sure he's making everything better." Hermione almost groaned. It was obvious from Ernie's expression that Theo's apology wasn't soothing any sore feelings. Most likely he strolled up to Ernie and said, "So, Macmillan, I'm here to apologize for embarrassing you, especially since that scene was probably the closest you'll ever get to Ormond's breasts." "Lovely," Hermione grouched. "I'll probably have to volunteer at the Halloween festival to make it up to Ernie, topless." Malfoy raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She landed the table on the very edge of the meadow near the entrance gate. A copse of trees, a more benign outgrowth of the forbidden forest, lined the field here. "What a dull little chore that was. Let's take a stroll," Malfoy said, walking off towards the trees. "What? No, you can't wander about," Hermione protested. "You're banned from the grounds now that the class is finished." "Except for Quidditch," he called back. "Except for Quidditch," she sniffed. No mere school rule was ever considered as important as this stupid sport. "That's enough dawdling," called Malfoy, who had almost reached the trees. "Come along."
"Malfoy,"
Hermione hissed, trailing behind him.
"you could be expelled, and that would break your probation. You could go—"
"Oh, look, a path perfect for exploring all these shrubby things," Malfoy said, disappearing into the copse.
"Malfoy,"
she hissed again, hurrying after him.
"get out of there!"
He looked around the meadow, but no one else was nearby. The big tent was billowing up again, with a few remaining students standing around it once raised. Ginny had already left for a quick Gryffindor Quidditch practice. Malfoy's voice floated out of the trees. "Oh, come see, I found bits of an overgrown hedge, and a rotting stump. Charming."
"Get back here!"
Hermione snapped. He was such a toddler. She followed the path into the trees, mostly small oaks, with a thick carpet of red gold leaves. He was nowhere to be seen.
"Malfoy!"
The path curved deeper, and a few bedraggled figures appeared, stark green against the other trees' turning leaves. He stopped by a crumbling brick wall and looked about. "Malfoy, where are—" "Looking for me?" Malfoy appeared from behind a large oak, suddenly standing before her. He was only inches away, but he made no move to touch her, just looked down at her intently. That warm sunshine smell filled her senses. Not cologne or shampoo, just him, so close. She raised her hands to push him out of the way, but the instant her hands touched his chest, they stilled, feeling the warmth of his body under his white shirt. His hands closed over hers, trapping them on his chest. "You haven't asked me," he said gently. Hermione glared at the knot of his green and silver striped tie. "Ask you what?" "About what I said in potions." She gave a small huff of annoyance. "I haven't thought about it." "All right, since you demand to know." Malfoy sat into her hair, still holding her hand against his chest. "This is what I want. I want you to terrify anyone who comes to you with a story about me and another witch. Then I want you to find me and threaten all sorts of hexes and hideous curses for even looking at another witch. And I want you to feel entirely justified in doing so." Hermione stared up at him before she could stop herself. "You are quite disturbed, you know that, right? I'm not going to play into your little dominatrix fantasies." His eyes shone silver. "And what do you know about dominatrix fantasies? Have you been reading on the subject?" Hermione flushed and pulled her hands out of his. She stepped back, feeling the wall's rough bricks behind her. Malfoy stepped forward, keeping a thin distance between them. "We're not discussing this," she said hoarsely. "I'm with Theo and—" "Are you really?" he asked, leaning closer. "Do you really want him, Hermione? That farce you like to play with Theo? Or those little kisses in the Great Hall? Do you think they could fool Malfoy?" His tone made Hermione tremble, and their lips were only inches apart. Hermione cleared her throat and took on a lecture tone. "Now, Draco, let's be reasonable. It simply wouldn't work. I won't sneak around in woods and dark corners with you when I can have a real public relationship. Oh, you and Theo are public, all right," Malfoy said, still standing too close. "That doesn't make your relationship real. And I'm not talking about some secret affair. This has gone quite beyond that." His voice grew rougher. "I finally worked it out, you know. You thought I was going to keep the old ways. You thought I wanted to hide you while I courted Astoria. As if anyone could hide Hermione Granger." Malfoy gave a disappointed look. "No wonder you rejected me. How could you believe that?" "You said you wouldn't tell anybody." "I thought you wanted to hide me," Malfoy said. He backed off slightly, the leaves rustling under his feet. "I'm too dark, too tainted, and my future, my children's future." He choked, and his face suddenly looked so bleak that Hermione wanted to fling her arms around him right there. She clenched her hands into fists, trying to keep her body under control. "I'm so sorry, Draco," she whispered. "I didn't mean what I said that day in herbology. Astoria said—" "I can guess what Astoria said." Malfoy's voice was harsh. "She certainly didn't hold back about you to me in the Slytherin dungeons. Merlin and I almost hexed her myself." "I didn't mean it," she repeated. Now her voice was choked. She was near tears. "You have every reason to hope for a real future. Your children will be very proud of you." Everything you've done matters, and in time, and perhaps less time than—" Malfoy stepped forward just enough to put a hand on her wrist, but no closer. "Shh, it's all right. I know you didn't mean it." Hermione nodded, swallowing hard. "We understand each other now," he went on, his grey eyes determined. "I want you, Hermione, and I need you," he said. "You're mine, and I'm yours. You won't deny me in the end." Hermione's mouth fell open in shock. I'm with Theo," she repeated. Malfoy looked smug. "For now." Hermione stumbled away from both him and the wall, practically falling down in the leaves. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to think. She didn't know what to do. Hermione Granger, know-it-all, didn't know anything. "You want me, and you need me too, Hermione," Malfoy said. His voice was conversational, like he was discussing ancient runes. "This isn't over." Hermione's eyes narrowed. He couldn't help but think of the charms classroom. He would not be hurried into anything. "Keep in mind what happened the last time you told me what I wanted and needed, Draco," she warned. "Yes, I was quite the idiot," he said, his voice calm, almost distant. "But I wasn't entirely wrong." Gave her a thin smile and turned to rejoin the path, disappearing among the trees. Theo found her as she re-entered the meadow, picking leaves out of her curls. Few students had lingered to enjoy the sun, and a quick scan revealed no Malfoy in sight. "I have apologized to Macmillan," Theo said, in a tone that invited staggered admiration. "Good," she said. He walked back to where she had assembled a table and pulled on her jumper, tucking her robe into her bag. She needed to talk to Ginny. Theo put a hand on her arm. "Are you still angry at me, Hermione?" he asked. She smiled and shook her head. No. He was just being Theo, and Ernie was a big boy. Theo loosened his tie. "It's good to be out of the castle. I think we could walk a bit as long as I'm in sight of the prefect." No, thank you, Theo," Hermione stammered. "No more walks with Slytherins today. I'm headed to the Quidditch pitch." Theo raised an eyebrow. "You're still going to Gryffindor practices?" "I have to talk to Ginny. Girl stuff." Theo looked skeptical, and Hermione was again struck by how different Slytherin men were. Girl talk was a magical phrase around Harry and Ron. They immediately backed off when she invoked it, possibly terrified they'd be drawn into a discussion of tampons or mango body wash. Then he shrugged. "All right," he said easily, kissing her on the cheek. "Perhaps we'll do something later." "Maybe," Hermione said, trying to sound light and flirtatious, but it just came out awkward and breathy. Theo didn't seem to mind, however, probably thought she was overcome with shyness in his sexy presence. Sometimes those giant Slytherin egos were a real advantage. Ginny was on her broom, about 40 feet above the pitch, and yelling at her team. Hermione held a wand to her throat and cast a sonorous, "Ginny, I have to talk to you." A friend waved to her to fly up, pointing to the extra brooms lying on the grass, and Hermione groaned. She hated flying and heights. But her need was too great, so she dropped her back and grabbed a broom, rising slowly upwards until she hung in the air beside Ginny. Her broom rolled slightly, and she grabbed its handle in a death grip. "All right there, Hermione?" Ginny asked, looking amused. She looked over the pitch. "Carter!" she shouted. "The snitch is by the quaffle for Merlin's sake. Get it! Londy and Londy, block him! Robbins, look to your left!" "Maybe this isn't a good time," Hermione said. "Well, you're up here now." Ginny looked her over. "You look a bit mental." "It's been a day." "Carter, it's right there!" Ginny shouted. She eyed Hermione again. "So, what's up?" "Malfoy wants a public relationship," Hermione said tersely, hoping to keep her time in the air as short as possible. "Carter, look over by the— What?" Ginny stared at her, wide-eyed. "I saw you with him earlier. Don't tell me you went and asked Malfoy about his intentions like a normal person." "No, he lured me into some woods, backed me against the wall, and shared his rather disturbing line of thoughts. I said it sounded like a dominatrix fantasy." Ginny raised her eyebrows. "You two are a bit odd, you know that, right?" Hermione couldn't deny it. The whole right to be angry bit was basically permission for me to be a violent, jealous nutcase, which is clearly typical behavior in Slytherin relationships. "Tell me everything," Ginny commanded, dark eyes boring into Hermione's. Not up here, I won't, Hermione answered, wobbling precariously.
Tell me something, Ginny demanded. I know. What about those diamonds? Where do they fit in?
I have said. Turned out to be a priceless family heirloom, a pure-blood courtship gift. His parents found out and went spare. Malfoy got a note from his father telling him to get a jewelry back by any means necessary. That phrase still made Hermione shudder.
Sweet baby Merlin, Ginny breathed. What did Malfoy do?
He wrote Lucius back, basically telling his father to fuck himself. Again, Hermione felt that flush of pride. He quoted your father, actually.
He quoted who? My... Hey, Ginny, I got the snitch,
cried Carter, a pudgy kid with hair almost as light as Malfoy's. He held up the golden ball triumphantly.
Great, Ginny shouted. Release it again. Everyone else, you play seekers too. To all of you. Everybody chases the snitch.
She turned back to Hermione, who was biting her lip and trying to keep her legs together.
That ought to keep them busy. Did you say Draco Malfoy quoted my father?
Hermione nodded. That time in the bookstore, your first year when Lucius
slipped a diary into my cauldron.
Ginny breathed, her face suddenly pale.
Tell me.
Lucius said, what's the use of being a disgrace to the name of wizard if they don't even pay you? And your father said, we have a very different idea of what disgraces the name of a wizard, Malfoy. Ginny clutched the sides of her head, and when that wasn't enough to express her feelings, she spun around her broom a few times, looping up and down. She ended up in front of Hermione again, her broom hanging still and straight.
I don't believe it.
Believe it? I tried to return the diamond set to Malfoy on Monday. Practically beat him over the hat with it. He won't take it back.
This is crazy. Have you two even kissed yet? You have? Oh, how was... Oh, shit, they're early.
Ginny spun on her broom to look back at the castle. What? Hermione tried to do the same and nearly fell off.
Slytherins, they get to pitch for practice at 5 o'clock.
Oh, no! Hermione would have wrung her hands in horror, but she was afraid to lose her grip on her broom. That means...
Why, Hermione Granger, said an unwelcome voice behind her. Do my eyes deceive me, or are you sitting on a broom? I'd say flying, but that word implies some basic skill.
Hermione started, then turned to look, causing the front of the broom to point upwards. She clutched the handle desperately, trying not to slide backwards. Malfoy hovered to her left in his green and silver Quidditch gear, looking supremely entertained. He knew his little confession in the trees had driven her straight to Ginny. Oh, he was foul.
Malfoy,
Ginny groaned. Just push down the handle, he told Hermione. She did, and the broom straightened, but then Malfoy flew right under her, missing her by inches and causing her to shriek and do a complete roll. She ended up on her stomach on the broom, hard pounding, her legs spread.
Nice skirt, Malfoy said wickedly.
Hermione clamped her legs together again, and he sailed off, laughing. Ginny watched him depart.
Are you sure he likes you?
She asked. Hermione straightened herself again, glaring after Malfoy. Unfortunately, yes.
Look sharp, Ginny warned. Here comes Astoria.
The Slytherin captain flew up to the two of them, an elegant sight in green and silver, her blonde hair streaming behind her. Weasley, Astoria said, halting with a graceful swirl. She looked at Hermione. I'm surprised to see you up here with us, Granger. Feet of clay and all that. Hermione narrowed her eyes at Astoria, disliking the reference. Aspiring to greater heights, are you, Granger? Astoria continued. One should be content with one's own level.
Oh, shut it, Greengrass, Ginny snapped.
Astoria's ice blue eyes swept the skies. Where Ginny's team was aimlessly flying, the snitch nowhere in sight. The Lundy brother was snarling something at Malfoy, who looked at him like he was a particularly disgusting beetle. Your team appears a bit wayward, Astoria said. Ginny flushed, brick red, and moved slightly away, turning her back to Hermione and Astoria.
Everyone back in,
she shouted. The Slytherin captain eyed Hermione again. What? No pithy response from the Gryffindor know-it-all? Care to strike at me now? Astoria's wand moved in her hand, and Hermione's broom suddenly bucked, causing her to lose her grip. Hermione's legs parted, and she tumbled left, hands scrambling to grab the handle, but missing. Then she was falling like a rock from 50 feet up, the green pitch below rising up to meet her. She heard Ginny scream, Hermione! But there was no time. No time to grab her own wand, or even to remember a wandless spell that might arrest her fall. She closed her eyes against the impact, hoping for merciful darkness. To be continued. Next up, more stories. Thank you for listening to this chapter of the Gloriana set by ThebeMoon. If you would like to stay up to date on upcoming chapters and stories, you can follow me on YouTube, Spotify, or AO3.